Good evening, and welcome to SL Tonight. My name is Felix Lebeski, and tonight we open The Cauldron, the reader-submitted story section of Weird Tales magazine, where everyday people sent in their own strange tales for publication. In this issue, we have two standout reader entries. First, After I Was Dead, written by 14-year-old John W. Walton, followed by another eerie reader submission from the same section. These short personal stories give us a fascinating glimpse into the imaginations of regular readers in the early 1920s, including a remarkably young voice. So let's peer into the cauldron and see what rises from its depths. First up, After I Was Dead, by John W. Walton. I died exactly 5 years ago. That day was somewhat like today, and I can remember clearly everything that happened. Death had always been the most overshadowing and terrible thought in my life. Often I spent sleepless nights thinking and brooding about death and what should become of me. People laughed at me for this fear, and my few friends pitied me. I hoped that someday I would get over it, but it was impossible. When I entered college, I had only a few chums, and that is the way it remained during my whole college career. I spent my time either in going on long walks or in reading. I never went out into social life at all, and dreams of athletic glory never occupied my mind. It was probably because I did not enter into anything pleasant that these morbid fits came over me. One day, while I was reading in my room, I suddenly became terribly ill. I quickly threw myself on the bed, and gradually my dizzying feeling left. In its place, I felt violent shooting pains around my heart. I saw black spots dancing wildly in front of my eyes, and then blackness and unconsciousness. When I could see again, I was gazing directly at the New York banner which hung over my roommate's bed. I tried to look elsewhere, but found that I could not do so, and when I tried to move my body, my efforts were likewise in vain. I wondered if this was death, the death that I had always feared, and yet I asked myself, how could it be? All my senses were with me, even if I could not control my body or breath. I wondered what would become of me, what would they think when they discovered me, and if I would recover. Then, through sort of a misty haze, I saw all the incidences of my past existence, how unhappy I had been, living a life of unfriendliness, filled with gloomy thoughts. Then I lapsed into unconsciousness. When I came to, I was lying in the same position as before. I heard footsteps coming up the hall. My roommate came shuffling into the room, and turning to me, he said, "Sorry you didn't see the game, Ben. It was fine." I felt that way too, although I could not answer. "Are you sick?" he asked presently. Again, I could not answer him, although I strained as hard as I could. "Gee," he muttered, "I guess I'd better get someone to look after you." He hurried away and presently returned leading Dr. Brantley, the dormitory doctor. He came over and put his ear to my breast, then turning slowly to my roommate Lee, "Richard," he said solemnly, "this boy has been dead for about 2 hours. Heart failure, I guess." "What?" cried Lee. "Dead? Yet," he added, "and I thought it would be his heart, or some abnormal death, for he's always brooding over something gruesome, and especially about death." "Too bad," said the doctor. "That boy I have always felt a strange attraction for. He was possessed of good mental powers, and it is sad that his peculiar dread ruined an otherwise promising life." The doctor was a large man with big shoulders. His face was round and merry looking, and his big gray eyes were nearly always twinkling. They were not now, however, as he bent over me and gently closed my eyelids, and he spread a blanket over my whole body. "Where does he live?" asked the doctor. "In Whitehall, Pennsylvania," answered Lee. "His father and mother were killed in a railroad accident. He has a guardian uncle, Mr. Wooding, who is sending him through college. Whitehall is where his mother and father are buried, so I guess that's the only place to send his remains." His words went deep into my soul. For the first time I realized my true plight. I was going to be buried alive. I tried and pulled and strained to move and speak and let them know I was alive, but it was useless. Then again, I lost consciousness. When I came to my senses again, I found that I was breathing, but nearly suffocated. I wondered where I was and tried to rise, but I could not do so because I was blocked by something above me. Then I remembered that I was supposed to be dead, and this was probably my coffin. I shuddered when I think I had to awaken too late, that perhaps I was indeed buried alive, but I did not give up hope, although I was nervous and nearly fainting. I tapped the upper boards with my fingers, and the sound was sufficient to tell me that there was no heavy weight resting on the coffin. I braced my stiff shoulders against the lid, expecting to find resistance, but it was not even nailed and was easily lifted off without much noise. With much effort I got upon my feet. My whole body ached, and my limbs were as stiff as a result of my cramped position in the coffin. I then turned my attention to finding out where I was. I heard a clock ticking in the corner of the room. I walked over to it. At the same time, the moon rose from behind the trees, and the moonlight flooded the room. Then I realized that I was at the home of my uncle, James Wood. I asked myself if I should go to him, but I knew what a shock it would be, and I was convinced of the fact that Uncle Jim had no real affection for me, but just pitied me. I decided that no one should know. Softly I tiptoed into the next room and gathered some heavy books and a small rug. I deposited them in the coffin. Then I draped the cloth that had covered my own body over this pile of junk. I replaced the top and was about to leave when it suddenly occurred to me to see what time it was. I looked at the clock, and by the light of the moon I could see it was exactly 12. By the calendar hanging near, I found it was Friday, October 15th. I suddenly realized that it was my birthday, and also that I was born at 12 o'clock 23 years ago. Now here I was, born again, risen from the coffin. I crawled slightly out of an open window into the cold night. I felt weak and stiff, but after walking a while I limbered up and was able to break into a run. I don't remember how far I ran, but the strain was too far great, and finally I fell to the road exhausted. The next thing I remember was the warm breath of a nurse who was bending over me. She told me how I was found delirious on the road and was brought to a hospital. When I asked her, she said I'd be able to leave in a week and that I was in Townville, which was not far from Philadelphia. She gave me a paper to read, and glancing it over, I saw a short notice about my funeral. No one had found out. That was 5 years ago. Now indeed I am born again. Fear of death has left me, and I am living a happy, normal life. And furthermore, I know the sweetest girl in the whole world is engaged to me. John W. Walton. Now, we continue on with our second story in this, Cauldron. As we stir, we come to mysterious radio. It was my fortune when a child to have been gifted with an uncanny knowledge of science. That branch of science which deals with electricity particularly held my attention. When but a boy, I turned my talent towards a field that was destined to lead me into a labyrinth of strange events which are probably way ahead of the present day. Radio was my latest habit, and I went into it head over heels, never dreaming of anything else, barely noticing what I ate at the dinner table. After a few years of hard work, I soon had a laboratory as complete as any in the country. And at the school, I was classed as rather queer, having such fancy titles as professor and doctor thrust upon me. Up to this time, my experiments had been confined chiefly to the ordinary trend of wireless, such as perfecting high-power transmitters and efficient receivers. I had also developed a high-voltage transmitter that, by a system of filtered sideband waves, I was able to transmit electrical energy over the ether. As yet, I had not the desire nor the money to patent this latest invention, and consequently no one save myself knew anything of it. Caring more for the betterment of the arts than for the money in it, I naturally wished to further my experiments along perfecting my latest invention. One night, while testing out a special receiver which would go with a new transmitter, I noticed the ultra-radiotron bulb which I was using would glow up with a bluish flame. Looking excitedly at the voltmeter and the plate circuit, I saw that the current jumped from 900 volts to about 1500. This, I surmised, was probably due to the motor generator, but on looking to this source, I saw that the motor read a steady 200 volts. By this time, I had become thoroughly excited and was for the moment undecided what to do. Then suddenly the fluctuations stopped, and although I waited for an hour, they did not appear again. The next night, at the same hour, midnight, I turned my receiver around 1,000 meters, a wavelength that is beyond the capacity of any transmitter or receiver so far developed by mortal man. No sooner had I balanced my grid condenser to that as secondary plate condenser than the bulb began to fluctuate violently, even more so than the night before. By some electrical phenomena, this increase and decrease is potential blew a fuse in the lighting circuit and left my room in a state of semi-darkness, only lit up by the bulb. The bluish light from the bulb played upon the walls of my little laboratory, creating fantastic apparitions, and as I sat there, a tremor ran through my frame which I attempted to shake off. Watching the light on the wall, I perceived that a strange systematic color scheme was prevalent when the bulb reached its highest point of incandescence. This gave me an idea, and taking from the table the automatic projecting relay which I was experimenting on, I connected it to the receiver. Instantly the bluish flames stopped, and in their place a white oval appeared on the wall. At the same time, I noticed the light in the bulb slowly died out, and to my anger I found the batteries, when tested, were empty. The next day my batteries were placed on the charger, and I looked eagerly forward to the evening when they would be full. Earlier that night I went to my room, and throwing over its serial switch, I did a little transatlantic phone work, which didn't hold much interest for me, so I snapped off my old set and turned toward my other apparatus. First I put a screen on the wall in front of the projector, and then I took care to look at the modular transformers to be sure the resistances were properly adjusted. This done, I walked over to my bureau, and reaching in the top drawer, pulled out an automatic which I had placed in my pocket, and turned off the light. It was blacker than the rubber sticks, and I stumbled over my set, quickly mapping on the bulbs. The white oval appeared on the screen as the night before, only giving a much clearer and steadier light. I looked down at the wave meter and saw that it read 500,000 meters. This was too much, so I set it down to 10,000. As I remember now, it was a great moment for me. When I looked down upon that screen, I beheld a scene which took my breath away. I recollected that it took place in Egypt thousands of years ago. There sat the Pharaoh in all his glory amidst the surroundings of his court, while off in an adjoining chamber the musicians of the harem played wailing japes. Then the big idea, and alas, the fatal idea, came into my mind. Adjusting the vernier on my capacitance, I was able to throw upon the screen any scene I desired. I added another loading coil and used this for tuning, as it was very selective. After a few minutes of calculating, I hit upon a place that seemed rather unusual. The screen assumed a grayish hue, broken in places by splotches of black. An intense stillness fell upon the room. It was terrible. My hands fell away from the dials and dropped to my sides like sticks. I tried to rise, but I was absolutely paralyzed. Again my eyes wandered upon the screen. Teeth began to chatter and my hair stood on end. Oh, if someone would only come into the laboratory, a friend or even a dog, anything to relieve this suspension. Slowly, shadows formed, twisting, twirling rings of blackness that finally plunged into one seething mass covering the whole of the screen. The room was filled with the stifling odor of decay, reminding me of a freshly opened grave. Shadows on the screen took on an oblong shape, which I recognized as that of a corpse. Not daring to take my eyes from the screen, I beheld the terrible apparition slowly rise and advance forward. I attempted to yell, but when I went through the motion, only a dry rattling echoed through my throat. The figure was well upon me now, so close in fact that its cold breath chilled my frame and polluted my nostrils with reeking stench. Then I happened to remember the automatic in my pocket. I tried my arm and found it free. Grasping the gun, I pointed it and pulled the trigger. A flash, a deafening roar, then peace and quiet and rest. I asked the nurse, and she told me how they had found me lying with an exploded gun in my hand amidst a wreck of condenser tubes, sockets, burned out radiostats, and other apparatus. That had been weeks ago, and I had just regained a consciousness today. I can't explain why the gun exploded, but when I regain my health and get some backing, I'm going to patent that invention. The devil himself cannot stop me. I'm Maxwell Wilson. And that wraps up our visit to the Cauldron. Two reader-submitted stories from Weird Tales 1923, one written by a 14-year-old boy, the other a chilling radio-related tale. It's always fun to hear these early amateur voices from the golden age of pulp. If you enjoyed this collection, let me know in the comments. Should we do more? Thank you for joining me on SL tonight. This has been Felix Lebesky, here with the Cauldron. Till next time, watch what you stir. This has been SL Tonight. Good night.